Lisa Martinez stood at the window of her new office, watching the purple sky of Kepler 442b slowly turn to gold as the alien sun set. She had been living on this strange world for 6 months now, working as Earth's main representative to the Galactic Commerce Council. The job was important, but sometimes she missed the simple blue skies of home. Her 8-year-old son Danny ran into the room, his school bag bouncing on his shoulder. His face was bright with excitement as he talked about his day at the integrated school where human and alien children learned together. "Mom, guess what? Zektar taught me how to count in Andromedan today, and I helped him understand baseball rules," Danny said, dropping his bag on the floor. "Can we play catch outside before dinner?" Lisa smiled and ruffled his brown hair. "Of course, sweetheart. Just let me finish this report first." The planet they now called home was considered one of the safest places in known space. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, making everything feel easier. The weather was always pleasant, and the local alien population was friendly and welcoming. Most importantly, there was almost no crime or danger. It was the perfect place for a diplomatic mission with a young child. The Zephyrian government had given Lisa a team of 4 bodyguards to keep her safe. She had tried to tell them it was not necessary, but they insisted. Captain Vexthol was the leader of the group. He was 7 feet tall, with a hard shell like an insect and large compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His voice was deep and formal when he spoke. "Ambassador Martinez, your protection is our highest priority," he had said on their first meeting. "We have protected diplomats from dozens of worlds. You need not worry about your safety." The other 3 bodyguards were just as impressive. Krelver looked like he was made of living crystal, his body sparkling in the light. The twins Zinara and Zinora floated in the air like jellyfish, their bodies glowing softly. They could read minds and talk to each other without speaking out loud. All 4 aliens were experts at their job. They had studied the files on hundreds of different species and knew how to protect each one. But when they read about humans, they were not very impressed. Earth was listed as a death world in their computer systems, which meant it was a dangerous place to live. However, the Zephyrians thought this just meant humans were good at surviving, not that they were particularly strong. Looking at Lisa, they saw what they expected to see. She was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed about 140 pounds. She seemed smart and good at talking to people, but physically she looked weak compared to the aliens around her. She never carried weapons and had no military training that they could see. "Humans are interesting," Captain Vexthol had told his team during their first briefing. "They come from a harsh world, so they are probably tough. But they are small and soft. We should have no trouble keeping the ambassador safe." The security detail had fallen into a comfortable routine over the past 6 months. Every morning, they would escort Lisa to her meetings with various alien trade representatives. The negotiations were usually boring and peaceful. Sometimes they would guard her while she visited local markets or cultural sites. In the evenings, they would check the area around her home and make sure everything was secure. Kepler-442b was the kind of world that made security work easy. There were no dangerous animals, no violent criminals, and no political unrest. The local population genuinely liked having off-world visitors, and the government was stable and friendly. The biggest problems the bodyguards usually faced were minor traffic jams or scheduling conflicts. The automated systems on the planet handled most daily tasks. Flying vehicles moved along set paths controlled by computers. Emergency services were fast and efficient. The weather was controlled by massive atmospheric processors. Even the parks and public spaces were maintained by robotic systems. Lisa had grown to love this peaceful world, but she sometimes worried that Danny was growing up too sheltered. On Earth, children learned to be careful and aware of dangers. Here, everything was safe and controlled. She wondered if her son would be ready for the real world when they eventually returned to Earth. The 4 alien bodyguards had also grown comfortable with their easy assignment. They respected Lisa as a diplomat and found her work interesting to watch. She was skilled at bringing different species together and finding solutions to trade disputes. But they never thought of her as anything more than a fragile human who needed their protection. Captain Vextil often discussed human physiology with his team during their off-duty hours. According to their databases, humans had evolved on a world with higher gravity, dangerous weather, and predatory animals. This had made them adaptable and resilient. But the aliens interpreted this to mean humans were simply good at avoiding danger, not that they possessed any special physical abilities. "They are survivors," Krelver had observed, his crystal body flickering with thought. But survival often means running away or hiding. They are not built for direct confrontation. The twins Zainara and Zinora had tried to read Lisa's mind a few times, but human thoughts were strange and hard to understand. They could sense her love for her son and her dedication to her work, but nothing suggested she was anything other than a typical civilian. None of them had ever seen a human in a true emergency. They had no idea what Lisa Martinez was really capable of when everything she loved was threatened. The peaceful world of Kepler 442b had lulled them into a false sense of security about the species. They were protecting Dot. As the days passed, the bodyguards became more relaxed. They started to see their job as more ceremonial than necessary. After all, what could possibly go wrong on such a safe and controlled world? They had no way of knowing that their comfortable routine was about to be shattered in a way that would change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. The stage was set for an event that would reveal the true nature of Earth's children to the universe. The morning sun cast long shadows across the diplomatic quarter as Lisa Martinez walked back from her meeting with the Andromedan textile merchants. She felt good about the day's work. The negotiations had gone well, and both Earth and the local traders would benefit from the new agreements they had reached. Her briefcase contained the signed contracts that would bring Earth's cotton to 12 new worlds while importing advanced synthetic fibers that would revolutionize clothing manufacturing. Back home, it was exactly the kind of win-win situation that made her job worthwhile. Captain Vexthal followed 3 steps behind her, his compound eyes constantly scanning the peaceful streets. The other bodyguards had spread out in their usual protective formation. Krelver walked to her left, his crystal body reflecting the morning light in rainbow patterns. The twins Zinara and Zinara floated overhead, their telepathic abilities monitoring the thoughts of nearby civilians for any signs of threat. "The negotiations went smoothly, Ambassador," Captain Vexthul observed in his formal tone. The Andromedans seemed pleased with the terms. "Yes, they were," Lisa replied, adjusting her grip on the briefcase. "Sometimes I'm amazed at how much we can accomplish when different species work together." The streets were busy with the usual morning traffic. Flying vehicles moved along their programmed paths high above, while ground-based transports carried goods and passengers to the lower levels. Everything was controlled by the planet's advanced computer systems, making accidents nearly impossible. Lisa's communicator chimed with a message from Danny's school. The boy had finished his morning classes early due to a teacher training session. He was now in the small park next to the diplomatic quarter, playing with his friends. The message included a security scan showing 4 children running around. The playground equipment, their laughter echoing through the area. "Danny's having fun," Lisa said, showing the message to Captain Vexthal. "I love seeing him make friends so easily." The captain nodded approvingly. "The park area is one of our most secure zones. The children are completely safe there." Lisa smiled and put her communicator away. She was lucky to have such a peaceful posting. Many diplomatic families had to live in high-security compounds, but here Danny could play freely with other children. The park was just a short walk from her office, and she often stopped by to watch him play during her lunch breaks. Meanwhile, 50 miles away in the industrial district, a series of small computer glitches was starting to cascade into something much more serious. The planetary traffic control system was experiencing what technicians would later call a cascade failure. One by one, automated systems were losing connection with the central processing hub. The first sign of trouble was a cargo hauler that began to drift slightly off its assigned flight path. The massive vehicle was carrying several tons of industrial equipment from the spaceport to a construction site on the other side of the city. Under normal circumstances, the traffic control system would have immediately corrected the deviation and guided the hauler back on course, but the correction signals were not getting through. The hauler's automated pilot tried to compensate, but without guidance from the main system, it began to drift further and further from its intended route. The vehicle's emergency systems should have engaged, but they too were affected by the spreading computer failures. Back in the diplomatic quarter, Captain Vexthul was reviewing the morning security footage when his communicator suddenly came, alive with urgent alerts. The calm, mechanical voice of the planetary emergency system filled the air with words that sent ice through his veins. Traffic control malfunction in Sector 7. Cargo hauler deviation detected. Emergency response teams dispatched. Estimated arrival time, 8 minutes. The captain's compound eyes widened as he processed the information. He quickly accessed the traffic control feeds and saw the massive cargo hauler moving erratically through the city. Its path was taking it directly toward the residential area where the diplomatic quarter was located. "Team, we have a situation," he broadcast to his fellow bodyguards. "Cargo hauler malfunction. Possible impact in the residential zone. Krelver." Crystal body flickered with alarm. What is the projected path? Captain Vexthul's hands moved quickly over his control panel, calculating trajectory and impact zones. What he saw made his blood run cold. The hauler was heading straight for the small park where Danny Martinez was playing with his friends. "Emergency evacuation of the park area," he ordered. "All personnel respond immediately." The twins Zinora and Zenora immediately began flying toward the park, their telepathic abilities reaching out to warn the children. But the distance was too great, and human minds were difficult for them to influence directly. Through the park's security cameras, the bodyguards could see the scene unfolding. 4 children were playing on the playground equipment, completely unaware of the danger approaching. Danny Martinez was running toward a set of swings when he tripped over a decorative metal bench that lined the walkway. The bench toppled over as Danny fell, its heavy metal frame landing across his leg. The boy cried out in pain and tried to pull himself free, but the bench was too heavy. His 3 friends ran toward him, then stopped in confusion when they saw the massive cargo hauler appearing in the sky above them. "Mom!" Danny called out, his voice carrying across the park. "Help me!" The cargo hauler was now visible to everyone in the area, its massive bulk blotting out the sun as it descended toward the park. The vehicle was fighting its own momentum, its emergency systems finally starting to engage, but it was too late. The hauler was moving too fast and was too heavy to stop in time. Captain Vexthul calculated the impact scenario with growing horror. The cargo hauler weighed approximately 15,000 pounds, even in the reduced gravity of Kepler 442b. When it hit the ground, it would create a crater 20 feet wide and crush everything in its path. Estimated time to impact, 45 seconds. He announced to his team, "We cannot reach the children in time." The 4 bodyguards were already running toward the park, their advanced physical abilities allowing them to cover ground quickly. But the distance was simply too great. Even with their speed and technology, they would arrive at least 30 seconds too late. Krelvar's crystal body was flashing with emergency colors as he calculated and recalculated their options. No viable rescue scenarios, he reported. The children are beyond our reach. The twins tried desperately to use their telepathic abilities to move the metal bench, but their powers were not strong enough to lift such a heavy object. They could only watch helplessly as the cargo hauler continued its deadly descent. Lisa Martinez was still walking back from her meeting when she heard the emergency alerts beginning to sound across the city. She looked up at the sky and saw the cargo hauler in the distance, its erratic flight path obvious even from far away. Then she heard a sound that made her blood freeze. Somewhere ahead of her, a child was crying for help. The voice was familiar, heartbreakingly familiar. Mom, help. It was Danny's voice, filled with pain and terror. In that moment, every instinct that had evolved over millions of years of human survival activated simultaneously. The diplomatic ambassador vanished, replaced by something far more primal and powerful. Lisa dropped her briefcase and began to run toward the park. The contracts that had seemed so important moments before scattered across the ground, forgotten in an instant. Nothing mattered now except reaching her son. The alien bodyguards saw her running and tried to keep up, but Lisa was moving with a speed and intensity they had never witnessed before. Her face had transformed from diplomatic calm to something that made even the battle-hardened Captain Vexthal take a step back. The cargo hauler was now directly above the park, its massive shadow covering the playground. Danny was still trapped under the metal bench, his friends frozen in terror around him. The emergency response teams were still 6 minutes away. Lisa Martinez was about to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of when everything they loved was in danger. Lisa Martinez ran through the streets like a force of nature. Her high-heeled shoes had been kicked off somewhere behind her, and her professional dress was torn from pushing through crowds of panicking civilians. None of that mattered. The only thing that existed in her world was the sound of her son's voice calling for help. The 4 alien bodyguards struggled to keep up with her. Captain Vexthal had seen many species in combat, but he had never witnessed anything like the human woman, charging ahead of them. Her movements were fluid and desperate, like a predator hunting its prey. Her breathing was controlled despite her speed, and her eyes held a focus that seemed to burn through everything in her path. Ambassador Martinez, please slow down. The captain called out, his voice strained from the effort of running. We need to coordinate our response. Lisa did not even turn around. She could see the park ahead and the massive cargo hauler descending toward it like a falling mountain. The vehicle's emergency systems were screaming warnings, but they were too little, too late. The hauler would impact the ground in less than 20 seconds. Through the park's entrance, she could see Danny trapped under the metal bench. His leg was caught, and he was pulling frantically at the heavy frame. His 3 friends stood around him in shock, not knowing what to do. The cargo hauler's shadow was now covering them all. Danny, Lisa shouted as she burst into the park. Hold on, baby. Mommy's coming. The boy looked up at her voice, his face streaked with tears. Mom, I can't get free. It's too heavy. Lisa reached the playground and dropped to her knees beside the bench. She grabbed the metal frame and pulled with all her strength, but it would not budge. The bench was made of solid steel and weighed over 200 pounds. Under normal circumstances, it would take 2 or 3 people to lift it, but these were not normal circumstances. Above them, the cargo hauler was beginning its final descent. Lisa could hear the screaming of its emergency brakes and the whine of its failing engines. She had perhaps 10 seconds before impact. Time seemed to slow down as Lisa looked at her trapped son. Every maternal instinct that had been shaped by millions of years of human evolution came flooding through her system. Her heart rate spiked to nearly 200 beats per minute. Adrenaline flooded her bloodstream in quantities that would have been dangerous under normal conditions. Deep within her brain, ancient survival mechanisms activated. The safety limits that normally prevented humans from using their full strength were overridden by the desperate need to save her child. Her muscles began to access power reserves that most people never knew existed. "Get back," she shouted to the other children, her voice carrying a note of authority that made them immediately obey. "Get away from here now." The 3 alien children ran toward the edge of the park, their eyes wide with terror. They had never heard a human voice carry such raw power and determination. Lisa stood up and looked at the cargo hauler, now only seconds away from impact. She could see that it was going to hit the ground just 20 feet from where Danny lay, trapped. The shockwave alone would probably kill him. Even if he was not directly crushed out in that moment, something clicked in Lisa's mind. She realized that pulling the bench away would take too long. There was only one solution, and it was impossible by every law of physics and biology that the aliens knew. She had to stop the cargo hauler herself. Lisa sprinted toward the descending vehicle, her bare feet finding perfect grip on the park's soft grass. The 4 bodyguards watched in stunned silence as she positioned herself directly in the path of the 15,000-pound machine. "Ambassador Martinez, no," Captain Nexthal screamed. "You will be killed." But Lisa was no longer listening to anyone except the voice in her head that told her to protect her child at any cost. She planted her feet firmly on the ground, spread her arms wide, and looked up at the massive cargo hauler bearing down on her. The moment of impact came with a sound like thunder. The hauler's momentum carried it into Lisa's outstretched hands, and for a brief instant it seemed like she would be crushed beneath its weight. The alien bodyguards prepared themselves to witness the death of the human they had sworn to protect. Instead, they witnessed something that would haunt their dreams for the rest of their lives. Lisa Martinez, a 140-pound human diplomat, caught the cargo hauler and stopped it completely. Her feet dug furrows in the ground as she absorbed the massive vehicle's momentum. Her muscles strained against forces that should have shattered every bone in her body. But she did not break the hauler's engines continued to push downward, trying to complete their programmed landing sequence. Lisa's body shook with the effort of holding the enormous weight, but she held firm. Her face was twisted with concentration and determination, and a low growl escaped her throat. "Danny," she called out, her voice strained but still strong. "Can you move?" I think so," the boy replied, his voice filled with awe at what his mother was doing. But Lisa was not finished. As Danny tried to pull himself free from the bench, she realized that the cargo hauler's position was still too dangerous. If she let go, the vehicle would slide forward and crush him anyway. So she did something that made the alien bodyguards question everything they thought they knew about physics and biology. Lisa Martinez began to lift the cargo hauler off the ground. With a roar that echoed across the entire diplomatic quarter, she raised the front end of the massive vehicle 2 feet into the air. The hauler's front wheels spun uselessly as she held it aloft, her arms trembling with the incredible strain. Krulver's crystal body was flickering so rapidly that he looked like a living strobe light. "This is impossible," he whispered. "The mass ratios, the force calculations ... cannot be done." The twins Zinara and Zinora were trying to read Lisa's mind, but all they could sense was a burning wall of maternal fury and determination. It was like trying to look directly into the sun. Captain Vexthal was frantically taking readings with his scanning equipment. The numbers on his screen made no sense. According to his instruments, Lisa Martinez was generating enough force to lift 100 times her own body weight. By every law of biology he knew, she should have been crushed instantly. Danny Move. Lisa shouted, her voice carrying across the park like a battle cry. Get away from the bench. The boy finally managed to pull his leg free and scrambled away from the metal frame. His three friends helped him to his feet, and together they ran toward the edge of the park where the bodyguards were waiting. Only when Lisa was certain that Danny was safe did she allow herself to feel the full weight of what she was doing. Every muscle in her body was screaming in protest. Her bones felt like they were about to snap, but she held on for 3 more seconds, just to be absolutely sure. Then, with careful control, she lowered the cargo hauler back to the ground. The vehicle's emergency systems finally engaged properly, and it settled into a stable position. The immediate danger was over. Lisa staggered backward, her body finally acknowledging the impossible thing it had just accomplished. Her hands were shaking, and her legs felt like water. But she remained standing, her eyes locked on her son to make sure he was truly safe. The 4 alien bodyguards approached her slowly, like they were approaching a wild animal. They had just witnessed something that would require them to rewrite everything they thought they knew about human beings. And Lisa Martinez, mother and diplomat, had no idea that she had just changed the course of galactic history. The park fell silent, except for the gentle hum of the cargo, hauler's emergency systems, and the distant sound of approaching sirens. Lisa Martinez stood in the middle of the playground, her body shaking from exhaustion and fading adrenaline. Her dress was torn, her hair disheveled, and her hands were scraped from gripping the metal hull of the massive vehicle. Danny ran to her as fast as his injured leg would allow, throwing his arms around her waist. Mom, are you okay? How did you do? That? Lisa wrapped her arms around her son, holding him close while her mind tried to process what had just happened. She could feel her heart rate slowly returning to normal, and the impossible strength that had filled her body was fading away like smoke. I'm fine, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice still trembling. Are you hurt? How's your leg? It's just bruised, Danny replied, looking up at her with wonder in his eyes. But Mom, you lifted that whole thing. It was huge. The 4 alien bodyguards approached them slowly, their weapons lowered, but their expressions showing complete bewilderment. Captain Vextil's compound eyes were wider than Lisa had ever seen them, and his usual formal composure had been replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Ambassador Martinez, he said carefully, as if speaking to a dangerous animal. What we just witnessed, how was this possible? Lisa looked at the towering alien with confusion. I don't understand. What do you mean? Krelver's crystal body flickered with nervous energy as he consulted his scanning equipment. Our instruments recorded that you lifted a mass of approximately 15,000 pounds. This is physically impossible for a being of your size and structure. Actually, Lisa said, settling down on a nearby bench and pulling Danny close, it's not that unusual. Back on Earth, there are lots of stories about parents lifting cars to save their children. It's called hysterical strength or something like that. The twins Xenara and Xenora floated closer, their telepathic abilities focused intently on Lisa's mind. What they found there made them exchange worried glances. She speaks the truth, Xenara said, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. Her memories contain many such instances. This is considered normal behavior for her species. Captain Vexthal felt his legs go weak. Normal behavior? Ambassador, are you telling us that all humans can do what you just did? Lisa shrugged, still not understanding why they were so amazed. Well, not all the time. It usually only happens in emergencies, when someone you love is in danger. The doctors say it's because adrenaline lets you access more of your muscle strength. Unusual. The implications of her words sent shockwaves through the security detail. If what they had just witnessed was considered normal human behavior under stress, then everything they thought they knew about Earth's people was completely wrong. Ambassador, Captain Vextel said slowly, our databases list humans as a relatively weak species. Your planet is classified as a death world, but we interpreted this to mean that you were simply good at surviving, not that you possessed such incredible physical capabilities. Lisa laughed, a sound that made all four aliens take a step backward. Captain, Earth is a death world because it's constantly trying to kill us. We have poisonous animals, natural disasters, diseases, and weather that can freeze or boil you in minutes. Humans had to become strong just to survive. The emergency response teams finally arrived, their vehicles landing around the park with practiced efficiency. The Zephyrian medics immediately began scanning Danny for injuries while the technical team started examining the cargo hauler. Chief. Medical Officer Yelthar approached Lisa with a portable medical scanner. Ambassador Martinez, I need to check you for injuries. What you did should have caused severe trauma to your muscular and skeletal systems. Lisa submitted to the scan, still confused by all the attention. I feel fine. A little tired, maybe, but that's normal after something like this. The medical scanner beeped and displayed its results. Chief Yelthar stared at the readings in disbelief. This is impossible. You show no signs of muscle damage, bone fractures, or internal injuries. It's as if your body was designed to handle such extreme stress. Well, Lisa said thoughtfully, I suppose in a way it was. Humans evolved on a world where you might have to fight off a predator or run from a natural disaster at any moment. Our bodies had to be able to handle sudden bursts of extreme activity. Captain Vextel was frantically accessing his database, pulling up every file the Galactic Commerce Council had on human physiology. What he found made him realize that military strategists across the galaxy had made a critical oversight. Ambassador, he said, his voice tight with concern, our files indicate that humans typically use only a small percentage of their muscular potential under normal circumstances. Is this accurate? That's what I've heard, Lisa replied. The doctors say we have built-in safety mechanisms that prevent us from hurting ourselves. But in extreme situations, those mechanisms can be overridden. The twins were now scanning not just Lisa's mind, but also accessing the broader human information networks they could reach. What they found confirmed their worst fears. Captain, Zenora said urgently, we are accessing historical records from Earth. There are thousands of documented cases of humans performing feats of strength similar to what we just witnessed. Lifting vehicles, breaking through barriers, carrying injured people for miles. This is not an isolated incident. Chief Yelthar was studying his medical readings with growing alarm. If humans can access this kind of strength when threatened, then our entire assessment of their military capabilities is wrong. We've been treating them as a minor species that needed protection. Lisa was beginning to understand that something significant was happening. The aliens around her were acting like they had discovered something shocking about humanity. But to her, what had happened was just a normal response to danger. Look, she said, standing up and brushing dirt off her torn dress. I did what any mother would do. My child was in danger, so I protected him. That's not unusual or special. It's just what humans do. Captain Vextel's mind was racing through the implications. If humans could routinely access strength levels that exceeded their apparent physical limitations, then Earth's military potential had been vastly underestimated. More importantly, it meant that the fragile diplomats and civilians that alien governments had been treating as protected guests were actually capable of defending themselves. Ambassador Martinez, he said carefully, I need to file a complete report about this incident. The Galactic Commerce Council will need to reassess their understanding of human capabilities. Lisa nodded, not really understanding why her actions had caused such a stir. Of course, Captain. I hope this doesn't cause any diplomatic problems. As the medical teams finished their examinations and the technical crews dealt with the cargo hauler, word of the incident was already spreading through the planetary communication networks. The security footage from the park was being analyzed by experts across the galaxy. Danny looked up at his mother with pride and confusion. "Mom, why are they all acting so strange? Don't their people protect their children too?" Lisa smiled and ruffled his hair. "Of course they do, sweetheart. They're just surprised by how strong humans can be when we need to be." What she didn't realize was that her simple act of maternal protection had just triggered a galaxy-wide reassessment of humanity's place in the universe. The peaceful diplomatic mission was about to become something much more significant. Deathworld had revealed its true nature, and the galaxy would never look at Earth's children the same way again. 3 days after the incident, the video footage from the park had been viewed by over 2 billion beings across 47 different worlds. The image of Lisa Martinez lifting the cargo hauler had become the most analyzed piece of media in galactic history. Lisa sat in her office, trying to focus on trade negotiations, but her communicator kept buzzing with calls from news agencies, military analysts, and government officials from across the galaxy. She had no idea that her simple act of protecting Danny had sparked such intense interest. "Ambassador Martinez," her assistant informed her, "you have another call from the Andromedan Defense Ministry. They want to discuss Earth's military capabilities." Lisa sighed and rubbed her temples. "Tell them what I've told everyone else. I'm a diplomat, not a military expert. If they want to know about Earth's defenses, they should contact the proper authorities." What Lisa didn't know was that the proper authorities on Earth were just as surprised as everyone else. The video footage had prompted an immediate review of human physical capabilities by both Earth's military and the Galactic Commerce Council Xenobiology Department. Captain Vexthil stood in the briefing room of the Zephyrian High Command, addressing a room full of military leaders and scientists. The large screen behind him showed frame-by-frame analysis of Lisa's feat of strength. "As you can see," he explained, "Ambassador Martinez lifted approximately 100 times her own body weight. Our initial assessment was that this was impossible. But further research has revealed that this is within normal parameters for human emergency response." General Tekvar, a veteran of dozens of interstellar conflicts, leaned forward in his chair. "Captain, are you telling us that all humans possess this capability?" "Not all, sir, but a significant percentage. Our investigation has uncovered thousands of documented cases throughout human history. Parents lifting vehicles to save children, individuals breaking through barriers to escape danger, people carrying injured companions for miles across hostile terrain." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian military had been planning their defense strategies based on the assumption that humans were a relatively weak species that required protection. If that assumption was wrong, then their entire understanding of galactic power dynamics needed to be reconsidered. Dr. Yelfar, who had examined Lisa after the incident, stood up to address the room. "Gentlemen, I have completed my analysis of human physiology. What we discovered is that humans have evolved a unique biological mechanism that allows them to override their normal physical limitations during extreme stress." He activated a holographic display showing human muscle structure. Under normal circumstances, humans use only about 30% of their muscular potential. This is a safety mechanism that prevents them from injuring themselves during routine activities. However, when faced with life-threatening situations, their bodies can access up to 90% of their strength. A murmur of concern ran through the room. General Tekvar's expression had grown increasingly worried. "Doctor, what you're describing sounds like a military adaptation. Are you saying that humans evolved specifically for combat?" "Not exactly, sir. They evolved for survival on an extremely hostile world. The ability to access emergency strength reserves was necessary for escaping predators, surviving natural disasters, and protecting their young. But the practical result is the same. Humans can become significantly more dangerous when threatened. Back on Earth, similar discussions were taking place in government buildings and military bases around the world. The video from Kepler 442b had forced human leaders to take a hard look at their own species' capabilities. General Patricia Hayes stood before the United Earth Defense Council, holding a tablet displaying reports from xenobiology labs across the galaxy. The alien response to the Martinez incident has been unprecedented. We're receiving requests for information about human physical capabilities from every major government in the galaxy. What kind of requests? Asked Secretary of Defense Robert Chun. Military assessments, threat evaluations, diplomatic repositioning. Several species that have been treating us as a minor power are now requesting formal military cooperation agreements. Others are asking for human security personnel to protect their own diplomats. The implications were staggering. For decades, Earth had been seen as a newcomer species that needed guidance and protection from more advanced civilizations. Now, suddenly, other worlds were looking at humanity with a mixture of respect and wariness. Meanwhile, on Kepler 442b, Lisa was dealing with the personal consequences of her actions. Danny had become something of a celebrity at his school, with alien children asking him endless questions about his super strong mom. The boy was enjoying the attention, but Lisa was finding it harder to adjust to her new status. "Mom," Danny said one evening as they walked through the diplomatic quarter, "why do all the aliens look at us differently now?" Zektar's parents asked him if all human parents could lift spaceships. Lisa laughed despite her exhaustion. "I didn't lift a spaceship, honey, just a cargo hauler. And no, not all human parents can do that. It only happens in emergencies when someone we love is in danger. But you could do it again if you had to, right?" Lisa paused, considering the question seriously. "I suppose so, but I hope I never have to find out." Captain Vexthal approached them, his formal posture showing the same respect he might give to a visiting military commander. "Ambassador Martinez, I have received new orders from the High Command. We are to provide you with an enhanced security." "Detail. Enhanced how?" Lisa asked, surprised. "Instead of 4 bodyguards, you will now have 12. Additionally, we are implementing new protocols that account for your ... capabilities. My superiors have determined that protecting someone of your potential requires different strategies." Lisa stared at him in disbelief. "Captain, I'm still the same person I was a week ago. I haven't changed. But our understanding of you has changed, Ambassador, and our understanding of your entire species." The changes were happening throughout the galaxy. The Andromedan Textile Guild had quietly tripled their security budget after learning that their human trade partners might be significantly more capable than previously thought. The Crystalline Confederacy had begun developing new diplomatic protocols, specifically for dealing with Deathworld species. Most significantly, the Galactic Commerce Council had convened an emergency session to discuss reclassifying Earth's status within the galactic community. The peaceful trade world of Kepler 442b found itself hosting the most important diplomatic meeting in recent memory. Lisa was called to testify before the full council, a gathering of representatives from over 100 different worlds. She sat at the witness table, still not fully understanding why her actions had caused such a stir. "Ambassador Martinez," said Councillor Zethran, the current council president, "we have reviewed the footage of your actions during the cargo hauler incident. We need to understand whether this represents typical human capability." "As I've explained to many people over the past week," Lisa replied, "what I did was unusual, but not unheard of. Humans have documented cases of emergency strength going back thousands of years. We call it hysterical strength or adrenaline rush. And how many humans possess this ability? Lisa shrugged. Probably most of us, under the right circumstances. It's hard to say exactly, since it only happens during life-threatening emergencies. The council chamber erupted in whispered conversations. Counselor Zethron called for order before continuing. Ambassador, are you saying that Earth has been concealing the true extent of human physical capabilities? Concealing? Lisa looked genuinely confused. No, not at all. We've never hidden anything. I assumed everyone knew about human emergency. Responses. It's basic biology. Dr. Yelthar stepped forward to address the council. Honored representatives, my analysis suggests that this is not deception, but rather a fundamental difference in evolutionary development. Most species evolved on worlds that allowed for gradual adaptation to challenges. Humans evolved on a world that required immediate, extreme responses to survive. The counselor from the peaceful garden worlds raised a tentacled arm. Are you suggesting that all humans are potential warriors? Not warriors, Dr. Yelthar corrected. Survivors. But the practical difference may be minimal when it comes to physical capability under stress. Over the following days, the council debated humanity's new classification. Some representatives argued for upgrading Earth to protected ally status, acknowledging their hidden strength while maintaining friendly relations. Others suggested monitored species, reflecting concern about human capabilities. Lisa watched the debates with growing frustration. This is ridiculous, she told Danny one evening. I saved my child. That's what parents do. Why is everyone making it into something political? Danny, who was becoming quite wise for his age, looked up from his homework. Maybe they don't understand what it means to be human, Mom. Maybe they've never had to be that strong before. His words stuck with Lisa as she prepared for her final testimony before the council. When she stood to address the assembled representatives, she spoke not as a diplomat, but as a mother. Honored council members, she began, I understand that my actions have raised questions about human capabilities, but I want you to